In 2007, nearly 1 out of every 2 phones in the world was a Nokia. 463 million phones sold in a single year. It was the most recognized brand on the planet. 6 years later, it sold 4 million. And what killed Nokia wasn't the iPhone, it was Nokia. Here's what almost nobody tells you straight. Nokia didn't die because it was blind. It had touchscreens before Apple, it had a modern operating system before Android, and it still destroyed itself. What killed it fits in one sentence: an internal memo leaked to the press that set fire to its own platform before the replacement was ready. To understand the fall, you have to see how big it was. In the early 2000s, Nokia wasn't a phone company, it was phones. In every office, in every pocket, in every country. In Latin America and most of the world, Nokia was the first cell phone 3 out of 4 people ever owned. The brand was a synonym for phone. The Nokia ringtone was, for years, the most played sound in human history. The 3310, its best-selling model, became a symbol, the indestructible Nokia, a meme before memes existed. The 3310 sold more than 126 million units, more than any non-smartphone in history. Its business was simple and dominant. Phones with buttons, solid, cheap, with batteries that lasted a week. That was the market, and Nokia owned it. In its best year, 2007, it had close to 50% of every cell phone in the world. 463 million units sold, stock at all-time highs, the brand untouchable. To put the scale in human terms, in 2007, Nokia was selling roughly 15 phones every second. Around the clock, every day of the year. Nokia was worth more than $200 billion at its peak, more than Apple at that moment, more than Google, one of the 10 largest companies on Earth. To put the dominance in scale, that same year Apple sold just its first iPhone, Samsung was far behind, and Motorola was sinking. Nokia outsold all of them combined. Then, that same year in California, Steve Jobs stepped onto a stage. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. It was the iPhone. And Nokia laughed. Nokia's executives looked at it and concluded the obvious. It was a fragile phone, no keyboard, terrible battery. Way too expensive. No serious customer is going to buy this. They were right at that moment. What they missed is that Apple wasn't selling a phone, it was selling an ecosystem. What Apple saw and Nokia couldn't see is that the phone wasn't a device anymore, it was a platform, and platforms are won by developers, not hardware engineers. An app store, an internet that fit in your pocket. The following year, Google launched Android. The war was already about software, not hardware. Nokia's problem was its operating system, Symbian. Brilliant for button phones, clumsy for a touch screen. Symbian had been revolutionary in its era. The Nokia E71, the E90, the keyboard smartphones of the early 2000s. They dominated an age, but the age was ending. Slow for developers, impossible to compete with iOS or Android in the age of apps. By 2010, the gap was brutal. Apple's App Store had 300,000 apps, Android 200,000. Symbian's store barely 30,000, most of them outdated. Building an app for Symbian required a complex SDK, expensive certification, and manual distribution. iOS did it in 3 clicks, developers left in waves. And here's the twist almost nobody tells. Nokia knew. In parallel, it built another operating system, modern, Linux-based, called MeGo. MeGo was the marriage of MIMO from Nokia with Moblin from Intel. Open source, fluid, ready for apps. It was everything Symbian wasn't. In 2011, it launched the N9, a phone with MeGo, full touch screen, beautiful design. Critics loved it. It had the answer to the iPhone. It had it in its hands. But inside, Nokia was paralyzed. Symbian, MeGo, or something new. Internal politics. Fear of cannibalizing the business that made it rich. The same pattern that sank Blockbuster. In 2010, the board brought in an outside CEO to fix it. Stephen Elop, ex-Microsoft. Elop came from Microsoft. To this day, some people argue his real mission was to prepare Nokia for a sale. Nokia denies it. The facts speak. 3 years later, Microsoft bought the business. On February 8, 2011, an internal memo from Elop leaked to the press. Its title, Burning Platform. The key line, "We poured gasoline on our own burning platform." 3 days later, he announced the decision. Nokia was abandoning Symbian, abandoning MeGo, and betting everything on Windows Phone from Microsoft. The first Lumia phones with Windows Phone arrived in late 2011. Good hardware, an operating system with no apps. Developers were already on iOS and Android. Nobody wanted a third ecosystem. The Osborne effect is named after a company that, in 1981, announced its new computer before it was ready. Sales of the old model vanished within weeks. The company went bankrupt that same year. And then came the Osborne effect. Announcing to the world that your operating system is dead before you have the replacement ready is declaring technical bankruptcy. People stopped buying Symbian overnight, but Lumia phones with Windows Phone weren't ready. In that gap, sales collapsed. Inside Helsinki, the panic was real. Employees later described it as watching a building burn while the executives argued about the curtains. Engineers who had spent years on MeGo learned through a press release that their work was dead. By 2012, carriers stopped promoting Nokia in their plans. Stores stopped ordering them. The brand, once unavoidable in every window, became invisible. During Elop's 4 years, Nokia's smartphone share went from 33% to 3%. The stock fell 62%. The company piled up almost €5 billion in losses. From selling 463 million phones in 2007, it ended selling 4 million smartphones in 2013. In September 2013, Microsoft bought Nokia's phone business for $7.2 billion. The deal closed in April 2014. 2 years after the acquisition, Microsoft wrote off the entire phone business as a total loss. Another $7 billion erased from the books. Today, Nokia no longer makes the phones that made it famous. What's left is a network equipment company in Finland, with another name and another story. Stephen Elop walked away with a $25 million exit bonus paid by Microsoft as part of the acquisition. The irony was not lost in Finland. Nokia's lesson isn't that it didn't see the future. It saw it before almost anyone. It died from 2 deeply human things: the inability to let go of the business that made it great, and the worst possible decision, announcing something is dead without having anything to replace it with. The killer of empires is almost never the new rival. It's how the empire says goodbye to itself. Apple learned the opposite lesson at the same time. When the iPhone was killing the iPod, Steve Jobs killed the iPod himself. Cannibalize yourself or the market will do it for you. Nokia couldn't. If Nokia killed itself with a memo, wait until you see the case of Kodak, the company that invented the digital camera and hid it because it would kill its own business. I'll leave it right here. And subscribe, one empire like this every week.